I have here a lens that made me love again very much shooting a Sony full frame camera. This is a great lens, a new lens, a budget lens, so it's great on your pocket, and I want to share with you my results and my review about this lens, why it is so great and why I do love it so much. And it's the first time when I feel that I want to pick every day Sony a7C, and this is because of this lens. I really had that feeling and I want to share with you this experience. Hi there, Tudor Matescu here. I have here a lens that brings me much joy, so very much joy. And I was thinking why? And I was really shocked that I was able to shoot finally Sony a7C like a small camera that it was meant to be, like an everyday camera. Yes, I have other lenses for Sony, but not this field of view. This is my most beloved field of view. It's the 40mm field of view. I really love to shoot this field of view, and this is the first time when I'm shooting a 40mm lens on a full frame. And I was amazed how much space I had, but also the field of view was tight enough and it helped me have nice compositions. So I was able to get nice portraits, nice street photography pictures, and all kinds of details with this lens. And also the lens is very light and it has a nice black matte to it, so really loving it on Sony a7C. And it was a joy, a pure joy to use it in street photography, for family photography and for day-to-day photography, because my camera bag was very light with this lens. So a totally joy lens to use, and I didn't had so much fun with my Sony full frame camera for a long time. Now this lens, it's made by Viltrox and it's the 40mm focal lens with f2.5 aperture. And I was always thinking about the Sony 40mm f2.5, and now I had the chance to experience what the 40mm f2.5 can do for your photography, because I was always thinking if that f2.5 will bother me in low light photography as much as it bothers me an f2.8 lens, even if it's on a full frame. So I will share with you these results. First, let's talk a little about the build quality of this lens. This lens, it's a simple lens, and on a Sony system, from my point of view, a simple lens does have sense. So you don't have any aperture ring, you don't have any custom buttons, you have just a focusing ring. All it's made from a good plastic, not a premium one, but not a cheap one, so it's very okay. I'm not afraid that I will drop it or it will be a problem like this. The lens is very light, ultra light, I would say. It has just 165 grams. Also, it comes with a rose metal lens hood, and also it has an USB-C for firmware update. So a simple lens, just put it on your Sony full frame camera and enjoy and shoot it. So really loving it, and the build quality from my point of view, it is good. And another thing to address is that the lens mount, it's made from metal. So a good everyday lens for the purpose of this lens and for the price of this lens. Now let's talk about the AF speed with this lens on Sony a7C. Well, the AF speed and AF accuracy of course are good. It's a Sony camera and all lenses in general are working well. But from time to time, I felt that it's not a Sony lens. I would have wished to be faster in low light and to have more accuracy, but overall I didn't miss any shots. So the AF, it's doing the job, but not at the level of a Sony lens, unfortunately, but again, not a deal breaker. Also, probably with the newer bodies from Sony, this lens will be faster. Now let's talk about the most important part of this lens, and this is image quality. How the image quality, it's coming from this pancake-ish lens. Well, the image quality from my point of view, it is really great. You have a little vignetting from there to there, but you have very good subject to background separation. So very good subject to background separation, very good 3D pop. It's an f2.5 and a 40mm lens. This means that your subject will be better isolated compared to an f2.8 35mm lens. Also, the bokeh is pretty smooth and you have rounded bokeh balls, as I'm showing here for my test in studio. So the bokeh balls are pretty rounded, and also I was able to observe this in some street night photography pictures. And yes, the images in low light and in good light are very, very good. You have great, amazing colors, and I was wowed when I've shot this lens looking at the colors. I thought I was shooting a Sigma, and it's not like Sigma. The colors are a little more saturated, but very, very good colors. So I was amazed that I don't have that colors that I don't like on Sony. And for what I was able to observe regarding color on a Sony a7C camera and on other cameras, also the lens matters a lot. So it seems that I don't like too much the colors that are coming from Sony lenses, but I do like some lenses, and some of these lenses are Sigma lenses and now the Viltrox lenses. I really do love the color rendered by this Viltrox lens on a Sony camera. So the color is really, really great, and I really want to touch on this. I do love more the color from this Viltrox compared to the Sony lenses. So compared to the 40mm f2.5 that I've shot it a little, and I will touch on that lens a little bit later, and how Sony 40mm f2.5 compares to Viltrox f2.5 from my point of view. So great, great colors. I really must insist on this subject. Next, great tonalities in black and white, great sharpness, great skin tone in black and white. The subject is popping nice. It's very good for black and white work. It was a joy to use this lens. I couldn't stop myself using it. So great for portraits and for black and white portraits. So really loving the sharpness, the detail, the micro contrast, the 3D pop, and the subject to background separation. And another tidbit to address here, compared to the 40mm f2.5, I feel that this lens has a little more personality than the 40mm f2.5 from Sony. Yes, that Sony lens, it may be sharper, clinical sharper, but this has some soul to it. This has some soul to it, and I'm really liking this. So really loving that I don't get a digital image, very sharp, very clinical on my Sony a7C camera with this lens. So totally loving this lens for image quality and what it's bringing to the table on Sony cameras. Now another thing to address at image quality and the operation of this lens, it is the minimum focus distance that unfortunately it's just 34 centimeters. So I felt that limitation, but this is it. And now let's talk about the price of this lens and how this lens is comparing to the 40mm f2.5 from Sony. So the price of this lens, it is just $168, and the Sony lens, it's $598. So it is cheaper than Sony with $400 plus. Do you get from the Sony lens $400 plus value? Let's look a little at that Sony lens. That again, I've shot it and I had a little experience in shop, and I was able to look at the JPEGs and also at the RAW files with the 40mm f2.5 from Sony. So we have here the lenses, and let's look at the specifications. The minimum aperture of the Viltrox is f16, and here we have f22. It's not a deal breaker for me. We have almost the same angle of view. This is a little tighter, but I didn't felt it tighter. I felt it really, really perfect. Now, this is something that I don't like too much, just 34 centimeters. In real world, it bothered me, but just a little. 25, it is really, really great. Maximum magnification, again, I don't think it's important for the moment. You have rounded aperture blades with the Sony lens. I don't know if the Viltrox lens are rounded, but overall the bokeh, how I've showed, it's nice, and the subject to background separation, it is very, very good. Also, the Sony lens weighs a little more. Now, the Sony lens has some more options to it. You have an aperture ring that you can click and declick, from what I know. You have AF manual focus. I don't know if it's really necessary. And you also have a custom button. So what I like about the Sony lens are the aperture clicks and the aperture ring. It is really, really great. But would I pay $400 more plus for the Sony lens just for these options and for the improved image quality? From my point of view, no, I would not do this, because of one reason that I've already stated in this video. That one reason is that I don't like that clinical sharpness that Sony is bringing to the table, and also I don't like the colors that the Sony lens is rendering on Sony a7C. I don't like that. They have that yellowish, greenish tint. With Viltrox, I don't have this, and it's not the first Viltrox that I'm shooting on Sony a7C. I also shot the Viltrox 20mm f2.8 that I reviewed, a great lens. I will link it at the end of this video if you want to see what that lens can also do. So this 40mm f2.5 is from that series. Now, which lens to buy? For black and white work, also you could say that the Sony, it will work better because it's very sharp and so on. Yes, it's sharp. But I also have a very sharp lens from Sony, the 35mm f1.8. And at beginning, when I didn't have enough experience to judge a lens by the rendering and I was amazed just looking at sharpness, I liked that lens. But now I don't like the 35mm f1.8 lens as much as I was previously liking it, because again, it's very, very sharp, too sharp, clinical sharp. I'm liking more the 35mm f2.8. So this is where this Viltrox comes into play. You have a very sharp lens, but with personality, with nice rendering, with nice subject to background separation, with nice smooth bokeh, with nice bokeh balls. Yes, it may not be as sharp as the Sony lens, but do you really need that clinical sharpness? Personally, I don't need that clinical sharpness. This is why I'm shooting vintage lenses. This is why I like Viltrox lenses on Fujifilm APS-C bodies, and I am looking for that rendering, for that special rendering, for that magical rendering. The only problem of this lens is that it's an f2.5 lens. Yes, I would have wanted an f2 lens like on Nikon Z, but this is it for the moment on the Sony system. So let's answer now to the question, is f2.5 limiting in low light environments or indoors? No, I felt that f2.5 it is much better than f2.8. So I was able to shoot this lens also indoors without problems and also in night photography. So a really great lens to have it on you and to shoot it every day. Now, which lens to get between this and the Sony lens? From my point of view, again, the Sony lens, it is very expensive for what it is. This was one of the reasons that I've decided not to buy it. It is too expensive for an f2.5 lens. Yes, it has all the whistle and bells, and yes, it's sharp, but it's clinical sharp, how I've said, and it's just an f2.5 lens with a price tag. So for me, the Viltrox has much sense if you want to shoot a 40mm lens on your Sony camera. It was a joy to shoot this lens. It was very fun to shoot this lens. The package in the camera bag was very light. It was like a Fujifilm APS-C camera. The results are very good. So no complaints here, no complaints. Viltrox did another great lens that I totally recommend, and you will not regret it. I really do love, how I've said, to use a 40mm lens, and this was the first time, how I've said, shooting a 40mm lens on a full frame. And yes, I felt it better than the APS-C or the Micro Four Thirds versions. I don't know why. I felt that I had a little more space, but also it helped me compose. All the things are staying very well, very nice. How I've said, I really do love the 40mm a lot, and this lens was a joy to use, and for the price, it's a no-brainer. So I'm totally recommending the Viltrox lens. Please use my affiliate links if you want to buy something from the gear that I'm using and this Viltrox lens. And also please check my next video, and why not check the Viltrox 20mm f2.8 on Sony full frame. Thank you, and I will talk to you soon. Bye bye.